All right, good official morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Equipping Home Visiting Staff to Support Immigrant Families webinar, where we'll be talking about navigating benefits, legal rights, and employment resources. Today is part one, which will cover immigrant access to benefits and resources through a public charge lens. However, we do have part two and three. Part two will take place on December 4th from 10 to 11:30, where we'll focus on immigration legal framework and referral process. And then our last one will take place on December 11th, but we'll talk about workers' rights and finding work. For today's webinar, we will focus on receiving an overview of major public benefit programs and be introduced to tools and resources to help them determine immigrant eligibility for major public benefit programs in Los Angeles County. We will also understand the interaction between use of public benefits and the impact on future immigration status, otherwise known as public charge, to reduce unnecessary avoidance of public benefits in the community. And then lastly, we will understand the other myths and barriers immigrants face in navigating public benefits and how to talk to the community about these myths and overcome hesitation to use the public benefits offered. Just a few housekeeping tasks before we get started. This webinar is being recorded and we will upload the recording on our website. If you have any questions while the speakers are presenting, please use the Q&A feature to ask them. We will have some time after the presentation is done and we'll have a facilitated Q&A session within this webinar. And then use the chat feature to say hello, say what organization you're from or anything like that. And then lastly, we kindly ask that at the end of the webinar, you take a few minutes to fill out a very short survey. This evaluation helps us understand how we did and what trainings we can offer you next. With that being said, LA Best Babies Network and the Consortium is extremely excited to partner with Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County for this training. We have two wonderful attorneys presenting today. Our first attorney is Lena Silver. A little bit about Lena. She is the Director of Policy and Administrative Advocacy at Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. She's worked there since 2015. Her focus is on access to benefits, public benefits, including Department of Public Social Service benefits and Social Security benefits. Lena came to NLSLA after completing a fellowship at the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law in Chicago and a clerkship at the United States District Court for the Southern District of Ohio. The second attorney who's joining us for this webinar is Alexandra Gay. Alexandra is a staff attorney at Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County, where she focuses on public benefits advocacy, particularly issues related to access to benefits for the immigrant communities. With that being said, Lena and Alex, we're super excited to have you today and very excited for this training, so I will pass it along to you.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction and for the warm welcome and invitation to present to you all today. We're so impressed with this amazing network, almost 200 people, and we really hope that we have a good discussion today. It is timely to discuss this. It's always timely, but it's especially important right now when we know there's so much anticipatory fear and anxiety in the community. And at the beginning of the last Trump administration, public charge was a very hot topic. And we know that a lot of people were harmed because of what we call the public charge chilling effect, where people avoid use of public benefits even when it doesn't impact them. So thank you for being here. Yes, we'll share all the slides. We have a website that you can also take a look at, BilaNetwork.org, that has a lot of other resources that you can use when working with families in their home. Okay, but today, like Anna said, we're going to focus on immigrant access to public benefits and resources through a public charge lens. Let's see. So we're Neighborhood Legal Services of Los Angeles County. Our traditional service area where we mostly service the northern parts of LA, the Valley area. We have a general hotline, and then we have a health consumer center hotline that's separate. The health consumer center is one of, I think, 8 or 9 in the state that focuses on all things access to healthcare. Any questions about billing, denials from your healthcare, issues with Medi-Cal, that all goes to our HCC hotline. There's no income cap there. And then the fastest way to get a good appointment with our organization is through our online intake. And you can also see the other services we provide on our website. We are the lead organization for the Benefits Access for Immigrants Los Angeles Network, which we call the BILA Network. We have a website where you can refer your clients for benefit enrollment and legal services related to access to benefits, questions about public charge, and navigating complicated or difficult benefit situations. You can also give the hotline here, that's the Churla Immigrant Assistance Hotline, and they can help fill out the referral on our website. This training is legal information only. If you have a specific issue you're thinking of and you want to refer a client or they need specific advice, we encourage you to contact us in the ways I just showed. Today, we're talking about a general overview of the barriers to access to benefits and how that harms our community, an overview of public charge. We're going to go quickly through the top major benefits programs and myths and facts about how getting benefits harms or doesn't harm you. And we're going to talk about something called sponsor deeming, which impacts people who are lawful permanent residents or green card holders, and they have trouble navigating benefits because they're afraid of how using benefits could impact their sponsor. So for some context, why do we have this special project? Why are we focused on immigrant access to benefits? Well, the first thing is immigrants comprise about 35% of the total population of Los Angeles. And there's another statistic that about 50% of children live in a household with at least one immigrant parent, which you all visiting homes, I'm sure, have noticed. But immigrants experience a higher rate of poverty at about 21.6% of all immigrants compared to 14% of the general population and 35% for the undocumented population because of a lot of things I'm sure you're also witnessing. Lack of access to good housing, to public benefits, and to gainful wages. In the LA homeless count in 2023, Latinx, Latina populations represented 43% of the unsheltered population, which is higher than I think the general population, while other groups dropped. And in the 2024 count, again, while we saw a general decline in homelessness, that population continued to rise. So we make these connections between fear and difficulty accessing public benefits and supports and the rise in poverty and homelessness in that population. And then generally speaking, this number is pretty persistent over the past few years. 25% of immigrants who are eligible for benefits report avoiding them because of public charge fears, which creates more poverty. These are some interesting statistics from 2017, and that's the link if you'd like to read this study that shows the difference in the utilization of CalFresh food aid for people based on the language they speak at home. And you can see that there's a lot of disparities in different immigrant communities, even greater hesitancy or fear amongst certain communities, but still generally 93% of English speakers get CalFresh, which means they know about it. They're not afraid of it. They think it's great. That's amazing. That's almost 100%. But then look how the numbers drop based on your language. So something to think about when doing outreach, that there's a lot to overcome. So we're going to talk about one of the main sources of that hesitancy to use benefits, and that's public charge. And the way this might come out when you're doing a home visit is that people might say things like, oh, I received benefits, but does that affect my immigration status or my options for adjusting? Do you think I can be deported or my husband can be deported if I use benefits? What if my kids use benefits? I heard that that could harm me and my ability to stay here with them in the future. And if I apply, is my information safe or is that going to be shared with the federal government? So what is this public charge test? The public charge test is a multi-factor balancing test that we're not going to go into the nitty-gritty of today, but what's important is to know that it's used by immigration officials only when deciding these two things. Are they going to let someone to come into the US from outside? And that is not something that's happening with the families that you're working with because they're here. Or are they going to give someone inside the US lawful permanent resident status through a green card, or otherwise known as a green card? And that's usually through a family-based petition. So family-based petitions are when someone in your family petitions the government. They say that we're going to take care of this person, we're going to be their sponsor, and that's their path towards staying in the country and eventually naturalizing. That's a step after you get your green card. So this is what we're talking about. The public charge test tries to determine whether someone will become primarily dependent on the government for subsistence. If yes, the person may not be admitted or get a green card. Alex, you're supposed to present these slides. So come back and I'll go off and then I'll see you all back soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Lena. And thanks all. All right, so just picking up on Lena's explaining about the test. If the immigration official who is applying this public charge test determines that the person is likely to be reliant on the government in the future, then they can deny the application for a green card. There are lots of different factors that the immigration official will consider when applying this public charge test. So the person's health, their sort of language abilities, the support that they get from family members. But one element, one factor that the immigration official is allowed to consider is the person's personal use of certain public benefits programs. So that's why there's this link between use of public benefits and concern about immigration status or about an ability to adjust, is because one of the factors that's included in this public charge test is the use of very particular public benefits. And so in the slides that are coming up, we'll talk more about which benefits are presently included in the public charge test. And you'll see that it's a very narrow category of benefits, but that's the sort of genesis of this link between concern about using public benefits and concern about being able to adjust status. And so we'll go to the next slide. Cool. And I see, just very quickly, I see a little question in the chat about whether this pertains to the sponsor, the beneficiary. So we'll talk about issues related to green card sponsors in later slides. These questions sort of mishmash together. So first we'll focus on public charge, which only applies to the person who's applying for their green card. And then we'll talk about kind of sponsor issues. All right, so perfect. So public charge only applies in very particular immigration sort of pathways. So it only applies to folks who are applying for a visa or a green card through a family-based petition or an employment-based petition. And as Lena mentioned, the context in which we all, will interact with it most, or that we're most concerned with, would be folks who are in the United States who are applying for permanent residency through a family member. Just a note that green card holders who have been outside of the United States for longer than 180 days in a row and are seeking to return, technically they can be subject to a public charge test, but that's not sort of the lion's share of what we see. So it's people who are applying for a green card through a family-based petition that are going to be subject to this test. And just a note there's a great resource called keepyourbenefits.org. If you haven't used it before, it's kind of a helpful check. For providers, you can kind of check your own public charge knowledge about what status is or what immigration processes it applies to and what it doesn't apply to. Also really helpful for families as well. So just a plug for Keep Your Benefits. All right. So public charge does not apply to all of these processes. So if someone already has their green card, they've already been, admitted as a permanent resident, they will not face a public charge test when they try to naturalize or when they renew their green card. Again, there's that little caveat for people who are outside of the US for longer than 6 months, but generally speaking, if someone's a green card holder, they're not facing a public charge determination. Again, people who are already naturalized citizens, they are not facing a public charge determination. If someone, this is a little more complicated, but if someone is undocumented, they don't have status, and they don't really have a pathway to a green card, they're not going to go through a public charge test because they're not going to be applying for a family-based petition for a green card. And then importantly, the next slide shows the many other categories of sort of humanitarian pathways that will not face a public charge determination either. So if someone is applying for asylum, they've been granted asylum, they've been granted refugee status, or folks with TPS, these people are not facing a public charge determination either. You see there special immigrant juveniles, VAWA self-petitioners, UNT visa applicants and holders, DACA applicants and people who are renewing their DACA status, and the other folks that you see there, Afghan and Ukrainian entries or entrants and parolees. These folks are also not facing a public charge determination when they either apply for this initial status that you see, or if they try to adjust, if they're able to permanent resident status through being granted one of these statuses. So if someone applies for asylum, they're not facing public charge when they're granted their asylum status. And then when they try to adjust to become a permanent resident through their asylum status, they're also not facing public charge there. So a lot of people that will not face a public charge test. So it's this big sort of boogeyman, but it only applies in pretty narrow circumstances. It doesn't apply to most folks. There's an important clarification. This gets a little bit in the weeds, but there's an important clarification in the rule that the current administration, the Biden administration, had released in 2022, which is that if someone's receiving public benefits and they fall into any one of these exempt categories, then the benefits that they use while they're in these exempt categories cannot be used against them if later they try to get their green card through a family member. So let's say someone is in the process of applying for a U visa, and I'm sure folks here, have worked with folks who are in the process of applying for U visa. It can take a long time. If they are getting CalWORKs for themselves and their kids as U visa applicants, if their U visa is eventually denied, then the CalWORKs that they used as a U visa applicant cannot be used against them if they try to adjust status through a family-based petition later. So it's kind of in the weeds, but just a note about that. And if there are ever, particular questions about folks that you're working with, please feel free to reach out. But just the overall message, public charge does not apply to many, many people. All right. And under the current rule, public charge only considers the use of very particular benefits. And so we'll go to the next slide. Perfect. So which public benefits could be considered in a public charge test if someone actually is in a process that faces the public charge test? That's going to be monthly cash assistance, and specifically SSI, CalWORKs, General Relief, or CAPI, and potentially TCVAP, but that's a very small program that we'll talk more about later. But this is a very particular set of cash benefits that is included in a public charge test. You'll notice that this doesn't include Social Security retirement or benefits through EDD, so like unemployment or state disability insurance, just these programs. And note too that like getting stimulus checks or tax credits, things like that, that's not included in a public charge determination. And also, what can be considered is long-term institutional care, like in a nursing home paid for by Medi-Cal. So this isn't like, a month-long or a 2-month-long hospitalization after an accident or after a surgery. This is someone is living in a nursing home, getting constant care for years. That use of Medi-Cal can be considered in a public charge determination. So you'll see here, the world of benefits that's currently included in the rule is very small. And I'm sure folks on this call are also aware, if you've been working with immigrant communities, eligibility for those cash aid programs is really limited. So if someone's actually eligible to personally receive one of those cash aid benefits programs, they are probably not in a position where they're going to face a public charge determination because they're already a naturalized citizen, or they're already a green card holder, or they are already a U visa applicant. Eligibility for those cash aid programs is really limited. So if you're receiving it, you're probably not facing public charge anyway. Though you'll see there at the bottom, we kind of have a caveat. So in the CAPI program in particular, and for some like parolees, There can be some overlap, so they may qualify for these cash aid programs and may also face a public charge determination, but that world of folks is pretty small, but important to know. All right, we'll go to the next slide. Cool. Okay, and here are the other many benefits programs that are presently not considered in the public charge test. So Medicare, Medi-Cal, again, except for long-term care, but like doctor's visits, specialist visits, hospitalizations, transportation, prescriptions, that use of Medicaid, Medi-Cal, not included in a public charge determination. IHSS services, so if someone is enrolled in Medi-Cal, they have a qualifying disability, and they are approved to pay a home caretaker to provide assistance to them in the home, not included in a public charge determination. CalFresh, WIC, let's see, school breakfast and lunch, all these programs that you see here under the current public charge rule, not included. So folks can receive these benefits and participate without concern that it would impact their immigration status under the rule as it's currently constituted, we have to say. All right, the next slide. The new sort of Biden rule also clarifies, this was true under the previous rule as well, that use of benefits by the person's family members is not included in a public charge determination either. So the only benefits that could be considered if someone faces public charge are benefits that they personally are receiving, not benefits that their kids are receiving. So if you're working with a family and the kids are citizens, they're receiving CalWORKs, but the parents don't have status and they're not participating in the CalWORKs program, the kids' use of CalWORKs would not impact their parents' public charge determination. So that was a big clarification in the new rule, and important to share. And we'll go on to the next. Cool. Okay, so here's I think, the big question on everyone's mind is what happens if the new administration wants to change the public charge rule. So I'm sure people who've been doing this work for many years remember the last administration, the last time Trump was in office, they had made efforts to expand the benefits programs that could be considered in a public charge determination. So people may remember that it included use of Medi-Cal, not just long-term care, and also use of CalFresh, so food stamps, and I believe Section 8 as well. So that's what happened previously. There were lots of efforts to sort of fight that rule in the courts, but that's what happened before. And so the question is, what happens now? And all we can really do is acknowledge that uncertainty. And all we can do really is provide context about what happened last time. We don't know what's going to happen when the new administration is inaugurated next year. We can say even under the previous public charge rule, it was not applied retroactively. So the changes that were made in the benefits that would have been considered in a public charge determination, people were given warning that that change was happening. It only would have applied prospectively. We can also say that even when the previous rule was in effect, it took effect for a very short period of time before the Biden administration sort of changed it, or before the court stopped it. It took effect for a short period of time. And even in that short period of time, the number of applications for a green card that were denied because of public charge was almost nothing, like truly 2 or 3, and then those were overturned. Other considerations as well, making changes to this rule, during the administrative rulemaking that's required to change the public charge rule, that does take time. There's a process. There are going to be groups that are going to do what they can to fight those changes. But, we do have to say that we don't know how it's going to change. We don't know what that process is going to look like. And all we can say is that as those changes are made, we will be following it, providing the best information we can. But it's certainly a challenge to reassure folks, because we just don't know. Lena, any more to add on that?
Wait. No. But just acknowledging, we have a newsletter that we can share the link after that you're welcome to follow, and you can also follow our website. And to the extent that things do change or there's a process of them starting to change, you can, remain apprised of the latest changes. We anticipate it's likely that this administration will try to do something like this again, but as everyone knows, there are a lot of things that they want to do, and it's really unclear how fast or exactly what and in what process. So, the most important thing to say is that you remain apprised and current with information, and you can share that nothing has changed at this point. And that accessing health and food benefits and cash benefits, especially for parents that just had babies and can't work, you have to balance those incredibly critical needs now. The other thing we haven't had to really say for a while, because a child's use of benefits is not counted, is, doing some math in people's heads. I think, Alex, you have to step out, right? You do a little bit of math, right? So a lot of folks, if they're here undocumented and their children are documented and they don't have a current pathway toward getting a green card, you kind of do the math. Okay, let's say you're working with people with really small kids. They can't petition for their parents until they're 21. So we're talking about 20 years from now. So in any kind of conceptualization of the public charge rule, thinking about use of benefits, maybe what the past administration did was just expand that bucket. But even they restricted and made it so that a child's use of benefits didn't count, so as not to create a chilling effect for citizens' children. There's not really any circumstance where use of benefits in any way is an end game. It just isn't like that. So you're thinking about, oh, I'm not gonna even put in any kind of immigration applications for 10, 15, 20 years. It's not something I'm gonna worry about now, even if this rule changes. In the least, I'm gonna get them for my kids because that's what the current rule is and that's what it was before. And, you can say that you came to this training with a bunch of attorneys who showed how many people were actually impacted by public charge, even when the rule went into effect. It's almost none. So what we're really dealing with, and what we've always been dealing with public charge, is that it's a little bit complicated. People make really rational decisions about what the most important thing to them is, which is remaining with their children in this country. And so they just don't participate or avoid everything. And there's no circumstance where that is advisable, truly. We want to make sure kids are going to the hospital. We want to make sure people aren't getting a ton of medical debt. Want to make sure people are accessing cash aid if they're about to get evicted. We really just need to take care of ourselves right now and remain informed. So that's what I would like to say. But obviously, people who have fear, it's legitimate. So we want to support them and validate that and just try to give them as much information as possible for them to make an informed decision for their families. Okay. So what are people, so right now, the rule hasn't changed. Nothing has changed. Things in Washington always take time. This is the current state. These are the things people are eligible for. Okay, so I hope everyone knows, and I'm sure you do, that we are a really cool state in California, and for all our problems, and we do have many, we're doing a good job with health access because everyone who is financially eligible is eligible for Medi-Cal. There's no asset limit and there are no immigration restrictions. So everyone should be on Medi-Cal who is low income. And we are doing a pretty good job of that in California. People are not as afraid to use Medi-Cal as they are to use cash aid and food aid, which is good. It's also just so expensive to access healthcare without it that I feel like that necessity kind of pushes people over the line and toward health insurance. Also, a lot of people automatically transitioned from restricted scope to full scope when that expansion happened. There are about 600,000 people who are technically undocumented on Medi-Cal in Los Angeles alone. What we're learning, though, is that even though people are on Medi-Cal, not everyone is aware that they're on full scope Medi-Cal now because that switch was automatic. There wasn't really enough communication. So that means that people are probably underutilizing their healthcare benefits. So you as outreach workers and healthcare workers working in people's homes and in clinics, it's really important that people learn health navigation and self-advocacy to access all the new things that they're eligible for that they weren't eligible for if they were on restricted scope. So just highlighting that as a point of education that I think it's important to integrate into your outreach and client interactions. This is an extremely underutilized benefit for the undocumented population and probably in general, but in-home supportive services is a benefit of Medi-Cal. If you are eligible for Medi-Cal, you're eligible for IHSS, so long as a social worker does an assessment and finds that you need in-home support. And this is a level under kind of nursing home or out-of-home nursing home care. You need help bathing, you need help shopping, you need help cleaning your home. And then for some people, there can be a very high level called protective supervision where you need supervision all the time. This can be for people, who could be at risk of self-harm if they aren't supervised 24/7. But while 600,000 people are on Medi-Cal who are undocumented since the complete expansion last year, only a few thousand people are on IHSS, which is it's like 14% of the whole Medi-Cal population is undocumented and like less than 1% is on IHSS. So we really need to promote this. If you're working in a home, like a baby came home and they have severe disabilities, they came out of the NICU, mom can't work, she has to care for baby all the time, make sure that you are applying for IHSS. You get a little bit fewer hours if you're a parent or a spouse, because there's kind of this expectation that you are supposed to be caring for that person, but still you can get some hours, especially if they're severely disabled. The caregiver does have to be documented, yes. IHSS providers must have work authorization. There is some legislative work going on around this, but technically you are a employee of the person who employs you. The benefits go to the person who's disabled, but the money gets paid to the worker. But think about it. Is there someone else in the household or the family, not the parent, but a sister, an auntie, an older sibling who's over 18 who can do this work? Think about how to bring money into the household to care for someone who's sick or disabled. There's no immigration requirements, like I said, for IHSS, but there is an ITIN requirement that's a little complicated. You're going to be told to apply for an ITIN, which is a tax ID, but not doing it and not proving that you do it is not a barrier to your application being processed. So if you are applying for IHSS and you're told, oh, I can't process your application because you don't have an ITIN yet, that is not correct. DACA recipients, yeah, can be caregivers because they have work authorization that comes with DACA. Yeah, it looks like Alex is answering the managed care versus Medi-Cal, but basically everyone in Medi-Cal has been placed into a managed care plan at this point. There are ways to challenge that and seek fee-for-service or go out of your managed care plan for specialists, which is complicated, and that's something Health Consumer Center, the number I gave you before, can help with. Okay, so Cover California is for people who their income is too high for Medi-Cal and they do not receive insurance through their employer. People, there was a pause on Medi-Cal renewals for 3 or 4 years that restarted. People who were then over income should have automatically transitioned to Cover California. I hear that's a bit sticky for some people. So if that's something that's happening for you or your clients, also reach out to the Health Consumer Center or to BILA. I think open enrollment is still ongoing. I can't remember the last date. I think it's a date in December. Does anyone know? I had it on a prior slide, but I forgot to put it into this. I think we're in the open enrollment period now, though, so it is important people are aware of this. Alex, if you could find that, or Vanessa, and put it in the chat, that would be helpful. The big thing with this is that there are immigration status restrictions for this as opposed to Medi-Cal, but an exciting expansion this year is that DACA recipients are eligible for Cover California as of November 1st. January 31st, thank you so much. That's when Cover California open enrollment ends. Thanks for your help, everybody. Okay, so CalWorks, this is such a great benefit, and a lot of you might be serving people who are receiving home visiting program through CalWorks funding. I know there are a few different buckets of funding through home visiting, but one of the large ones is CalWorks. So there's a lot of good things that can come through CalWorks, and CalWorks can be very difficult and frustrating to navigate. There are a lot of eligibility requirements for CalWorks, which is cash aid for families with at least one child. There are a lot more requirements. We could do a whole training on CalWorks. I'm happy to come back and do that. We could talk for an hour plus about CalWorks when it comes to the work program and all the eligibility requirements and all the special protections for domestic violence survivors, and all the tangential supports like home visiting and family stabilization and ancillary support for gain requirements and homeless assistance. It's a lot, and I do think it's underutilized, and all those special programs are underutilized. So again, happy to come back and just talk about CalWorks. But basically, the important thing for this is a lot of immigrant families avoid CalWorks when their children are eligible, and that's because of the old rule before Trump. The rule around public charge was that if a child used cash aid, even if the parent didn't, and it was the family's sole source of income, that would also be considered in a public charge test. That's the big change that we have that is so positive. We have a clean rule. A child's use of benefits, no matter what it is, no matter if it's a sole source of income, no matter if it's cash aid, doesn't impact the parent. Undocumented DV victims, you're asking about CalWorks eligibility. DV alone does not grant you any special status, although you should be treated with special sensitivity by the department. And it's possible that consideration of DV could help you get more homeless assistance. But if you have a person who's a survivor of domestic violence who's undocumented, you should be screening them for special immigration relief, and you will get that training in a couple weeks, like Anna described from our very seasoned immigration attorney. We'll be talking about you and T visas and VAWA at that training. But so these are the categories of people who are eligible for CalWorks. Again, citizen children, regardless of their parents' immigration status. So that's a big bucket we want to identify. When the parent's not eligible, there are restrictions on what they can access because they're not eligible themselves. They can't get like the homeless assistant portion for themselves. They can't get the cash aid for themselves, and they can't get a lot of the benefits connected to GAIN, which is the Welfare to Work program. But the cash is important. I want to flag people paroled into the United States for less than a year are eligible for state-funded CalWorks. A lot of people are in this category in Los Angeles who have pending asylum applications and were granted parole for less than a year. When that parole expires, they're not eligible anymore for CalWorks, and they're not eligible for CalFresh, but they are eligible for the duration of their parole for CalWorks. So I definitely want to flag that and make sure you all are aware of that. If you want to learn more about cash aid and public charge, you can watch those recordings. So now we're going to talk about Cash Assistance Program for Immigrants, another wonderful resource. Flagging at the bottom, we recently did a big training on this. Maybe some of you came, watch that, or take a look at the slides at your own leisure. We also have some community outreach materials that you can use on CAPI in multiple languages. But this is a program for aged or disabled people. It has the same, ooh, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure the answer to the question about parole, but we can find out. I'll just say, if you are not sure what your client's immigration status is and you're not sure what they're eligible for, ask to see their documents or their A number, and it might be something that we can troubleshoot with you and help you determine in terms of what they're eligible for. Okay, so again, CAPI is like SSI, but you get it from DPSS. It's for people who went to who go to Social Security, try to apply for SSI, and they're told, no, you're not eligible because of your immigration status. If you're completely undocumented, you're not going to be eligible for CAPI either. But if you have something pending with USCIS and you do not have a deportation order against you, or it's been suspended or withheld, you could be eligible for CAPI so long as you're over age 65 or you have a permanent disability that's like as serious, the same as a permanent disability for SSI. It's actually the same agency. It's a separate agency called DDS that will determine if you're disabled enough. Takes a while, but we see success. So, just flagging if it's a lawful permanent resident who never worked in this country or not recently, or they haven't been here for more than 5 years, CAPI. If you have a mom you're working with who has a pending U visa and she's just really has like severe depression and it's persistent or other mental health or other post-birth disabilities, think about CAPI. It's a much higher amount you can see, so it's really important to be screening for this benefit. Another benefit that DPSS just calls refugee cash assistance, which can be really confusing because there is something called refugee cash assistance, which is just for refugees. And then some of those people Alex talked about, special immigrants from Afghanistan and Iraq and Ukraine who have special statuses that we do see in our community, but not at a very high level. They are getting RCA and they have a whole system of like refugee resettlement agencies that help them. But there's also something called state-funded RCA, and the technical name of it is the Trafficking and Crime Victim Assistance Program. And it's for U and T visa folks who either are trafficking survivors and haven't applied for it yet, have applied for a T visa, and then people who have applied for a U visa or been granted a U visa. And it's the same amount of money as refugee cash assistance, and you get it for 12 months, and then you transition. I'm not sure you're going to see this program that much because you're working with families with children. So this is for single parents, but if something were to happen, if children were removed or whatever, or maybe there's a miscarriage, whatever, this is the program. I'm actually going to back up and flag that this population, people with pending U visas or granted U visas, people with pending T visas or who are trafficking survivors are eligible for all benefits. And they are listed there on all the lists, CalFresh, CAPI, CalWorks, but they do have difficulty getting benefits from DPSS because they don't have to present the same immigration documents and they don't have to have a social security number and they don't have to have an EAD, an authorization to work, because their documents are still pending or going to be filed. So if you're working with this population, you're having any difficulty getting them all the benefits they're entitled to, that's a really good referral to legal aid. Okay. So food assistance. So the community knows this benefit is CalFresh. There isn't really any distinction. But technically in California, we give CalFresh to more people than the federal government gives benefits to. And if you are an immigrant that's getting benefits broader than the federal government, that program is called the California Food Assistance Program. We're actually going to start using this terminology, the California Food Assistance Program, in preparation for the Food for All expansion, which is the same kind of like the Medi-Cal expansion where we're giving CalFresh to everyone regardless of immigration status. That implementation was delayed to October 2027. The only approved population so far by the state is 55 and over. This is an ongoing effort by advocates to expand Food for All to all populations. But for now, when you walk into a welfare office or you apply for benefits on Benefits Cal or anywhere, it just says CalFresh. There's no distinction. But we do want to make sure you know that there are a lot of people who are eligible for CalFresh. No, not CFAP, October 2027 for 55 plus. But if you were living in like Arkansas and you were a lawful permanent resident green card holder, you'd have to wait for 5 years to get food assistance, but not in California. As soon as you get your green card, you can get benefits. And then we're flagging other people, like we talked about before, U visa applicants and U visa holders. They're not eligible for federal benefits, but they are in California. A trafficking survivor for 1 year, even without filing anything, they can just say, I'm a survivor, I'm working on my T visa. They can get benefits. And then the other categories are federally funded. If you want to know more about food access, not just CalFresh, but just generally, where can I get Market Match? How do I connect to WIC? What do I do? You can watch these trainings for food. Food is a really big need in our community. Unlike Medi-Cal, there are much greater restrictions on who's eligible for food. We know there are very high rates of food insecurity. I don't have it here, but think about how to access if somebody has special dietary needs, maybe they have gestational diabetes or other things they're dealing with. Think about medically tailored meals through CalAIM, Medi-Cal through the health plan, and try to connect your clients to WIC, which we're going to talk about right here. WIC is for everyone. WIC is the best. If you don't have a quick access to WIC, we can give you the outreach. I don't know, someone could chime in if you are all up to speed on WIC, but there's an email for outreach at PHFEW because I always get it wrong. And they respond in like minutes and will enroll your client. I mean, you could be sitting in their living room and get them enrolled basically in one visit. And then, you need to be up to speed on where food banks are and other food assistance, and that's in the slides on the prior page. Any questions about food and WIC? But yeah, WIC does not ask for immigration status. It's the best. We're gonna go quickly through SSA benefits. So there are two different types. Yeah, there are two different types or buckets of benefits through SSA. Title II benefits and Title 16 benefits. Title II are for people who have worked and have gotten credits. It's an insurance program, so you've been paying into the program. This includes retirement, Social Security disability insurance. We're not covering it all here, but survivors benefits and child's benefits, etc. It's based on the worker's work credits. The amount they get depends on the worker's earnings. The immigrant eligibility is pretty flexible. Like if you had an EAD and you were working lawfully, EAD is a work permit, and you were working lawfully and you got enough credits, you can get Title II benefits. So we just gave a really big training, like I said, on age and disabled benefits, which you can find on our website. If you're curious if your client might be eligible, I encourage you to watch it. Title 16 benefits are harder to get. They're for people who are only 65 or over or have a disability, same as CAPI. They're not based on work credit, so they're for people who've never really had gainful employment in their life. There's a lot more restrictions. There's restrictions on how much you can earn and how much money you can have in the bank. And the benefit amount is flat depending on your living situation, whether you're blind, whether you're married, etc. You can see the chart there. And immigrant eligibility is more restrictive. It's possible to get both if you have a low Title II benefit and you have very low resources and not a lot of income, then you can supplement your Title II benefits with Title 16 benefits to get to the maximum SSI amount. This is the breakdown of eligibility. If you're trying to figure out, is it worth applying for my client? We didn't put it here, but there is a program in LA County called CBEST. We can share the referral form. If you think your client is disabled or your client is over 65 and you would like them to be assessed for eligibility for a disability benefit, you should refer your client to CBEST. You have to be persistent. You have to follow up. You can do your best to support the referral with documents and IDs and all that stuff. But they'll give you a pretty good determination of whether they think your client could win. they are hard to win, these cases for disability. So if they don't think that the illness is serious enough or there's not enough documentation yet of their illness, they won't recommend application. But if they think that there is, they will do the application and fight for the benefits. So we can try to share that, how to do a CBEST referral. Okay, so some people are asking about this. Alex, are you doing this or am I? Forget.
Ooh, I'm happy to do it, whatever works best.
All right, you go for it. I think.
Okay. Sounds good. Thanks, Lena. Yeah, at the beginning of the call and then a few or at the beginning of the webinar and then a few comments that have popped up have asked about what happens or what impacts can there be to people who have sponsored someone else's green card? And these questions sort of get mixed in quite often with public charge questions because they have to do with sort of the green card process and what the implications are related to access to public benefits. So we can share really generally what this sponsor or how the sponsor issue sort of presents. So I'm sure folks have seen this before. If you are working with a green card holder who has a sponsor, so someone who signed an affidavit of support when the person received their green card saying that they would essentially provide sort of financial support for the green card holder, the applicant. What happens is that when green card holders with a sponsor apply for certain public benefits, so this doesn't apply in Medi-Cal, but if they're applying for CalFresh or CalWORKS or CAPI or SSI, if they're eligible, they will be asked in the application process about the income and resources of their sponsor, so the person who signed that affidavit of support. And the reason they are asked about this is that the welfare agency or Social Security is allowed to consider the sponsor's income and resources. They assume that a portion of that income and resources is available to the person that they sponsored because they signed this sort of contract. And so if the sponsor has high income, then a chunk of that person's high income is going to be deemed as available to the green card holder. And if that deemed amount is high, then it could make the person ineligible for benefits because the DPSS will say, well, you have access to your sponsor's income or at least a portion of it. That's, more than our income limit. So you're not eligible for benefits. Or it could impact the amount that they're eligible for. So maybe it doesn't make them totally ineligible, but it impacts their grant amount. The challenge is that, or sometimes what we'll see also is, or oftentimes, people don't want to give information about their sponsor when they apply for benefits because they either don't have a relationship with the sponsor really. It was sort of a distant person, maybe a friend of a friend or a distant family friend. So they don't have the information to provide because they don't know them very well, or they don't want to alert the sponsor to the fact that they're applying for benefits. There's some degree of like privacy violation there. Or they're concerned that their sponsor could get in trouble if that person applies for benefits. And so people will not provide information about their sponsor and then they get denied. So we see that all the time is people will say I applied for CalFresh. They asked me about my sponsor. I wasn't able to give the information. And so they denied my application. DPSS can do that because they're allowed to ask about the sponsor and they're required to ask about the sponsor's income and resources. But there are actually a lot of exceptions such that many green card holders should not actually have to give information about their sponsor. Some of the big ones are if the green card holder is already naturalized, that sponsor liability goes away. If the green card holder has credit for 40 quarters of work history in the United States, so that's about 10 years. Well, that is 10 years. That could be work that they've done personally, work that their spouse has done while they were married. If it's a young person, work that their parents did while the person was under the age of 18. So if they have credit for 40 quarters of work history, the sponsor liability goes away. If a green card holder is considered indigent, then they should be able to apply for benefits without providing information about their sponsor. So they can't afford food or shelter without benefits. There's a tricky thing that comes with that, which, provide a little bit more information about in the resources there, which is that there's a requirement if someone's found indigent that their name and name of their sponsor be reported to, I think it's the California Attorney General or to USCIS, which is obviously a scary thing for people. So they don't assert this exception, though as far as we're aware, nothing's done with that information. But that's just to say that there are lots of exceptions to sponsor deeming that may apply to a family. So if they're facing this barrier that they can't get benefits because they can't get around the sort of sponsor issue, just a plug that those are referrals that we can take. Challenge as well, as we said, with respect to public charge, we don't know what the new administration is going to do about sort of sponsor liability. So generally what we can say, because one concern is if I get benefits, is my sponsor going to have to pay everything back? What we share is that the state of California technically is allowed to request reimbursement from sponsors, but we're not aware of them ever doing this. Could that change if a new administration forces states to try to recoup money from sponsors? That's a possibility. We can't say for certain. But with respect to sponsor issues being a benefit to access to benefits, there are ways to address it and ways to talk about it. And so we have some resources there that we'll share around, and also, again, can take referrals to talk through these issues with folks. All right. Okay. So the next few slides we have relate to sort of myths about benefits access. So if we've tried to choose some of the most common ones or the most sort of odd ones, but if you have heard others, please feel free to add it into the chat. But there are lots of reasons why folks are concerned to access benefits. Some of it related to public charge, some of it related to sponsor deeming, but some of it's related to just misunderstanding about these programs and sort of myths that circulate. So we'll go to the next slide and we'll kind of go through some of them. All right, here's a big one. And we actually hear this quite a bit among providers as well. Do I have to wait until I've had my green card for 5 years in order to access benefits? So where this comes from is actually a federal rule. So under the federal law, someone with a green card will have to wait 5 years before they can access federally funded SNAP or TANF or SSI. I think it's called the 5-year bar. So folks may have heard of efforts to lift the bar, which is to remove that federal rule. In the state of California, the state has stepped in to say no. In the state of California, folks who have a green card can access public benefits without waiting the 5 years. They just get state funding, which is incredible and wonderful. So if you have people who are like, no, I can't get CalFresh until I've had my green card for 5 years, not the case in the state of California. Once you get your green card, you can get CalFresh, Medi-Cal, CalWorks, potentially CAPI or SSI, depending on, well, CAPI, depending on what you're eligible for. So that's a big myth to bust. You do not have to wait in California. Right, next slide. Cool. This is another concern as well, that if someone doesn't have status and they're enrolling in Medi-Cal, will their information essentially be shared with like immigration enforcement or with ICE? In LA, DPSS does not share folks' personal information with immigration enforcement agencies, with ICE. What does happen and what people might be aware of is that DPSS can or does contact USCIS to verify someone's immigration status. So there's an online program that they have called SAVE that's run by USCIS that they have access to. And if someone's a green card holder, they're supposed to put their A number in SAVE and they'll get it verified. So there is verification that happens if someone is seeking benefits that require them to have a certain immigration status. But it's not that this information is shared with immigration enforcement. Alina, any more to say about that?
We actually have a slide later, I think, that goes into more detail.
Okay, perfect. All right, and I just saw a question in the chat. Are there any issues with a permanent resident leaving their spouse due to DV and then requesting benefits? I should have said, Ashley, thanks for raising that. One of the other major exceptions to the sponsor deeming rules is domestic violence. So if someone has experienced domestic violence, either like at the hand of the sponsor's spouse, or by a non-sponsor, then if their need for benefits is linked in some way to their experience of domestic violence, which we all know, is not a hard link to make, then they should be exempt from providing information about their sponsor. You can get into the weeds a little bit. For some programs, they're exempt. So for CalFresh, for example, if someone has experienced domestic violence and their need for CalFresh is linked in some way to that experience of domestic violence, then they are exempt from providing information about their sponsor for 12 months. But they can renew after those 12 months, and get another year of CalFresh without providing information about their sponsor. So that's renewable in the CalFresh program. In the CalWorks program, it's a little harder. So if you can show that you've experienced DV, you can be exempt from providing information about your sponsor for 12 months. But if you want to renew that, you have to show some sort of order from a judge or from like USAS, from like immigration court, establishing or showing that you have experienced DV. So that's can be a challenge for people. So the rules will differ a little bit depending on the program, but thank you so much for raising that, Ashley. Yes, absolutely. If someone's experienced DV, they should be able to qualify for an exception to sponsor deeming. And though just a note that, these rules are a little complicated, and so eligibility workers aren't always aware of them and often don't ask and don't inquire about whether someone might be eligible for an exemption to sponsor deeming. So it's often something that someone has to assert, which is a challenge, obviously.
Yeah, these are probably not that rare, but we don't see them that much at NLS, and we're very happy to work on them. And I just want to flag, so far we only have a very detailed flow for CalFresh, but right here, when you get these slides and you click on it, it's a very detailed flow about who sponsor deeming applies to and what are the exceptions. We also have a training with everything. These slides have all the exceptions for every program. And as you can see, this flyer, which you can kind of keep at your desk or give to people, and again, it's in all languages on our website. It has the major exceptions. It has the benefits it applies to. It has the benefits it doesn't apply to. And just general understandings, but we don't want sponsor deeming to be a barrier to access to benefits. That's one of our main areas of practice. So definitely reach out if that is a barrier for your specific client. Okay. So we are.
I think we're on the next one. Okay. Cool. All right. So can getting CalFresh lead to SSI reductions? So people who've been doing this work for a while probably remember when SSI recipients weren't eligible to receive CalFresh. That changed, I think, in 2019. So if someone's receiving SSI, they should also be eligible to receive CalFresh, and so those benefits can be received together.
But only 64% of people on SSI receive CalFresh. So that's another big gap. But I don't know how much you all are working with people on SSI. Probably not that much.
All right. I don't know if folks have heard this before, and again, please feel free to drop in any others that you've heard that aren't listed here. But we do hear sometimes, if I enroll in benefits or I enroll my kids in CalWorks, will my children have to join the military when they turn 18 to sort of like work off the benefits that we received? No military requirements to receive public benefits. That is a myth. All right, and then the next one. Ooh, I think, so this is a little bit related. Will I need to repay the government for benefits used by my kids who are US citizens? So if I am using CalWorks or CalFresh when my kids are little, when my kids turn 18, will they have to repay the value, or will I have to repay the value of the CalWorks that we receive? No, CalWorks isn't a loan. Folks don't have to repay. I think we might have a slide about this, but sometimes it gets a little confusing because if you may be aware, you may have seen this with the families that you work with. Sometimes people can receive overissuances from CalWORKs or CalFresh. So that's when DPSS determines or thinks that they gave the person more money in CalWORKs or CalFresh than what they were due. And oftentimes that happens if there's like income that DPSS wasn't aware of that would have changed the person's eligibility or would have changed their payment amount. Or, people moved in or out of the household. There are lots of different situations that can create overissuances. In those sorts of situations, if the overissuance is valid, then the person may have to, or would have to repay, there are ways, would have to repay the value of the benefits that they received that they weren't actually due. But people who are eligible for CalFresh, who are eligible for CalWORKs, are not going to have to repay that in the future. It's just if you get overpaid for whatever reason. Though I would plug that oftentimes the overissuances and the calculations are not correct, and there are things that can be done to address them. And for people receiving CalFresh, if they have a disability or elderly, you can get those overissuances reduced. So if you're dealing or working with families that have problems like that, those are cases that we work on at NLS as well. Cool. All right, and then just a reminder that information when applying for benefits is protected. So again, the welfare agency will check with USCIS to verify someone's immigration status, but that information is not shared with ICE. And if someone is applying for benefits for their kids, but they're not applying for themselves, maybe they don't have status, they don't have a social, or they're applying for themselves, but there are members of their families that don't have socials, they do not and should not disclose information about those family members that are not applying, or about the status of the family members who are not applying when they seek benefits. They have to give information about income, yes, but not about the person's immigration status, and they should not. Reminder there. More to say about that, Lena? All right. Okay, so just a plug about some of the services that the BILA network provides. So we work with benefits enrollment specialists that can help folks enroll in Medi-Cal, Cover California. Oh, we should take it at My Health LA, apologies, and CalFresh. We can provide referrals for assistance in enrollment in other programs like Cash Aid, WIC, Vita Clinics, utility assistance. And then through neighborhood legal services, we can provide assistance with public charge questions, sponsor deeming issues, benefits access and retention problems. So if someone's applied for benefits, but they're been denied wrongly, or their application's been pending for a long time and it's improper, there are things that neighborhood legal services can potentially do to step in and help address those issues. And then we have a website where we accept referrals through, so it's bilanetwork.org. See, it's available in 14 different languages. And what happens is someone will submit a referral for assistance. It's automatically assigned to one of our partners, depending on where they live. The partner will follow up and sort of assess the need, and then either refer to neighborhood legal services for legal assistance, or provide assistance with the Medi-Cal enrollment or the CalFresh enrollment, et cetera. Yeah, and then that's it. So any questions, please feel free. Or I don't know, Anna, how you'd like to do it, to continue adding to the Q&A or to come off mic mute.
Folks are asking about public charge flyers. I thought we put a public charge resource page in here. Did we not?
We did, yeah. It should have been.
So let me show you. Yes, we have a lot of handouts, but the top two that I would recommend you take with you on home visits, especially right now, are, did they get erased?
Oh no.
That's okay. We'll add it in before you share the slides. We've been doing a lot of slide mashing lately with the changes. We have like 3 presentations. Okay, so do you see this? This is our website. If you are sitting and you forgot to print stuff out, you can translate this page to any language, put it into Spanish. But it has like top facts, the top things to remember. and 5 Q&As. So you can visit that, and it changes to any language, like I said, and I'm not sure what are your top languages. I'm guessing mostly English and Spanish. And then over here on resources, here's where like you can see our most recent training. We have to kind of archive that soon. But all of our past trainings are here, so feel free to, just pull up the slides and quickly take a look if you don't have a lot of time. We have tax credits, medical debt, the expansion, naturalization. You might have people asking about naturalization, especially right now, feeling fearful. So we have a great training on that and how to get help with it, food access. Okay, so I'm not gonna look at all of them, but I'll show you where our top flyers are here. So here's our public charge flyer. It opens into an amazingly well organized Google Drive that Alex maintains, but here we can just look for Spanish. It's two-sided, so you can either print them separately or two-sided. So this side kind of addresses what your immigration status is and whether you should kind of slow down about benefits or not. And then this side is like top facts since the law change in 2022. We haven't updated these in the last 2 weeks that says really anything about the new administration because the law has not changed. I mean, that's actually a really big message that we had for much of the former administration because it was like 2017 through almost 2020 before anything actually changed. So those are the ones I'd recommend you bring with you, but also, oh, excuse me, there's one just about children and use of benefits. So you may not be able to persuade a reluctant person with a sponsor to apply for benefits, or someone who thinks that they're going to apply for a green card soon and doesn't have any other status. You might not be able to convince the parent to apply, but you might be able to convince them to apply for their kids as a second best option. Although we want them to apply because it's a lot more money. And again, especially for cash aid, a lot of benefits go to the parent. Like you can get a diaper benefit, right, of $30 a month if you have CalWORKs for yourself and you're participating in GAIN or exempt from GAIN. But you do the best you can. So this is another flyer that it's just about kids that you can take with you on your outreach visits. I'll also flag our benefits screener that might be good for you to take with you if the family is talking about financial insecurity. We have a screener, a general screener that has like buckets of what they might be eligible for. Oh, I should say that we did not talk about wage replacement benefits like paid family leave and UIB and state disability insurance because you're about to get a very in-depth training on that. But that is like number one for also for the folks you're working with because a lot of them just had babies and a lot of people don't understand how to navigate and maximize both employment protections for pregnant, parenting, and lactating people and different wage replacement and how to maximize those and have them work together. So you will receive a separate training on that, but we do have it in this general screener. This is kind of long, but you can bring it with you. We're also entering tax season soon. I know it's crazy. We're almost at the end of the year, but beginning in like January, February is when you should start making sure that your clients are connecting with tax credits, which is really, and probably still will be in the next administration when they try to gut other public benefits, like one of the remaining sources of financial assistance in our country that's also very underutilized, which is extremely unfortunate. And it's because it's difficult to navigate. But, I really recommend you connect with like a Vita clinic and know where to refer people. And for undocumented people, it's so important. If you can help them get an ITIN, they can apply for state, a lot of state tax credits for working and parenting people. So that's something to flag in all of your visits. And here's a little guide on how to get an ITIN. So, job training support, utility assistance. These are things that we're working on at NLS to expand access for all immigrants. We're hoping Lifeline phones expands to people regardless of immigration status in the next month. We've been doing a lot of advocacy on that. So yeah, definitely check out our website and there should be good resources. We also just launched this page where you can go buy benefit or by status and kind of see what people are eligible for. So you're not alone, and this is very complicated, but if we can all figure it out, more people can get benefits. Okay, that's it. Any more questions?
Oh,
Um,
hi, Lena. You did have a few questions come in through the chat,
hmm,
related to the ITIN that you just mentioned. Do you support with assistance in getting an ITIN number for clients?
we do not. So I would recommend, and we can connect LA Best Babies, but that you do a tax credit training sometime in January, February. We can connect you to, they're called the Golden State Opportunity Fund, and they have an outreach person just in LA. But yeah, you have to work with a specific licensed entity that can give an ITIN. And Vita clinics know how to do that, but there really aren't enough Vita clinics for how many people in need there are. So building like community power around that. There's also a website that we link in our assessment for in LA. There's like ways to apply for tax credits online, and maybe your network could learn how to do that because you're already sitting in someone's home. We know how much disconnection there is from referral to referral, right? It's like a 50% drop off rate. You give a person 10 referrals, but their baby's screaming and they're not getting any sleep, they're not gonna do it, right? And they could lose out on thousands of dollars. I mean, this is not a tax credit training, but we have clients, because you can go back 4 years, that get like almost $30,000 in one dump. You can really infuse the household with money, and you only have to work a little bit. It's not like you had consistent gainful employment. You could have babysat or recycled or whatever, and you can be eligible for tax credits. So
Oh, well, that's amazing to know. Thank you for that.
county doesn't
Um,
let you go onto our website. Weird. Maybe you should do it at home. It's filenetwork.org. It's interesting that there's a firewall. Okay. What else have we got?
right. So you did have another question come through that said, do you have an immigration lawyer that does pro bono services?
So again, you're gonna get a comprehensive immigration training in a couple weeks from Elisa Dubenschbeck from our org. We have restrictions on the types of immigration services we can do because of our federal restrictions on serving completely undocumented people who are not survivors of domestic violence and other serious crimes. We really try hard, and we can often fit people in, but once in a while we can't. And so we have an immigration referral list. I can give it to you now, but you're also going to get it from Alyssa for sure.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah, there were a few other questions that came through about ITINs, but you answered all of those. And I see someone in the Q&A asked if you hold these trainings in Spanish for families, and if so, who can we reach out to? And I see that Alex is responding to that
Yeah, when we
live
do
in the
our
Q&A.
trainings, we always do a Spanish version. We do it through the Visión y Compromiso Promotora network. We're happy, like, we'll add you, Anna and Laurel, and whoever else wants to. You can go on our website and ask to be added to our referral list, I think at the top of our resources page. Where is it?
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yes. Yes, at the top of our resources page, if you go there now, you'll get all of our trainings. But if you would like us to come for a specific training, if this network wants to host for parents, you're looking at our staff, basically Alex and Lena, and then Vanessa, our awesome paralegal, I think is here too. So we don't have capacity to do a lot of small groups, but if you coordinate a large training, we will be there, and we can do them in Spanish, thanks to Vanessa. But also,
Excellent.
if you feel well educated now and you would like to do these trainings, we can help you make a slide deck, and you can go out and do it as many times as you want. We can definitely support you until you feel like you're ready to go give these trainings.
Making sure my mic is on. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lena and Alexandra, and providing us with this invaluable information. We really got a lot of insights and learned a lot from this training. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you all for being here. Just one last thing before you leave, if you can take the evaluation, I pasted in the chat below. But besides that, I think we're all set to close out. Thank you so much for joining, everyone.
Thank you.
I'll paste it one more time.
You.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.